Okay, welcome back. So what I got here is a cup of Ultra Cal 30 and a cup of sand. And one of these cups we're going to use to actually place the mold in. Um, I really don't know how much water I've been using. So I start out with a little bit of water, not much. And as the mixture thickens up and I add sand and I add Ultra Cal 30, if it gets too thick, too heavy to move around with the mixing stick, I will add a little bit more water. In those instances where I've added too much water, I usually favor sand over Ultra Cal 30. I add more sand to thicken it. And the reason for that is because Ultra Cal 30 isn't strong enough. It makes good binder, but it is not strong enough to put up with the expansion and contraction in the oven. It will crack, it'll crumble. If you try to make a mold straight out of Ultra Cal 30 and do a lost PLA process, it'll just fall apart on you in the kiln or whatever kind of an oven you're going to use. Alright, so I'm going to start mixing this. And you always, by the way, you always start with water. That's how much water I got, just very little water. But you always add powder to water. You don't dump the powder in and add water to it. Otherwise you'll have a hard rock mess in the bottom of it. And so I'm just going to start mixing little by little. You got plenty of time with this stuff, so you don't have to worry about it, hardening on you right away. You got at least a half an hour minimum. Most of the time I find I got 45 minutes before it even starts to set up. So I suppose you could probably mix these two in a bucket first with a drill, and mix them and then just add them in. But I just do them separately. I start out with the Ultra Cal 30. I think this process is called slaking. I'm not sure, but it's where the powder absorbs the water little by little. That's what I'm doing now. I'm adding it little by little and spreading it around in the bucket here so that it can really absorb the water. If you were using plaster of Paris, by the time you got done doing this, it'd be hard as a rock before you ever even had time to pour it in a cup. So I don't recommend plaster of Paris. You can make a mold out of plaster of Paris. I've seen guys do it online. But what happens is, if you're using a long, shallow mold, you probably have enough time. If you're using a cup like this, what happens is when you mix plaster of Paris, I think the mixing ratio is like, let's say 1 cup plaster of Paris to 2 cups of water. So it's very thin. And what happens is if you put it in a cup like this, fill it with plaster of Paris, put the part in, what happens is, because it has so much water in it, it shrinks away from the part, if you know what I'm saying. It will evaporate, and the plaster of Paris will be at this level instead of at the top of the cup where you want it. And what happens on my mold is that it begins here at the top of the mold, but then it shrinks down to this point. That's if you actually can, mix without setting up on you. This works with the Ultra Cal 30. It works perfectly if you get the right mix. Take your time. You see how much time I have? I have a lot of time to talk and stir. It's getting a little bit thicker now, but nothing to worry about. I'm going to start adding a little sand in. Again, this is play sand. And I live in Florida, by the way. And I've been told, or I've read and I've seen online that the ideal sand for this is white silica sand. But all sand, as I've abruptly learned, all sand is mined locally. And in Florida, we don't have any white silica sand. So the best we can do is play sand. Now it's getting a little thicker, but still watery. Now it's getting creamy and thick now. So I'm probably going to have to add a little bit of water into this. It's pretty thick now, you see it? It's pretty thick, but I have yet to go through all my materials here, so I'm going to add just a tiny little bit of water. Just to thin it out a little bit. Take your time. You don't want too much water in this. And I don't have much UltraCal left to put in here, so a couple more stirs and I'll probably be done with the UltraCal. I do have a drill mixer too, by the way, but I find it works pretty good just by hand mixing with a stirrer like this. And the drill mixer might put too many bubbles in it, so alright, so it's still getting relatively thick, and I haven't put all the sand in it, so I know it needs just a tiny little bit of water again. And the UltraCal is almost finished here. This will be the last of the UltraCal goes in there. And then the rest of it's going to all be water and sand. I've only put about 1/3 cup of sand in here, so it needs much more sand. Sand seems to be the aggregate in this mixture that allows the mold to stay together under intense heat. Because like I said, without the sand, the mold just falls apart. If you just try UltraCal by itself, it'll just fall apart in the oven. You got to run it up to about 1,000 degrees just to melt the PLA and burn it out. And you got to leave it at that temperature for maybe a couple hours. So the mold's got to put up with that heat, and then it has to put up with you removing it from the kiln or whatever else you're using, whatever you're using to heat it up, and then the cool down, you know, while you melt the aluminum. A little bit more water. I went a little over with the water now, okay? So what I do in that circumstance is add sand. Do not add any more UltraCal. Now I'm talking about a cup like that. I mean, to fill a cup like this. Of course, the quantities will be different for a larger mold. I'll leave that for you to figure out. But it's going to be some multiple of these cups, and it's always going to be 1 to 1. got about another half a cup. I'll start adding it in to thicken it up. I didn't add it all in. I want it to be creamy like that. That's probably about right. Too thick isn't good either. So too watery and it's going to shrink away, like I told you before. So that's about right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just take a cup. I'm checking here because one of these cups I had a hole in the side of. What I do too, I don't know if this is necessary or not, but I do it. I dip my part in the mix. I dip it in there just to wet it out. I think it probably will prevent bubbles like that before I begin. Okay. Put it to the side, fill a cup. I'm going to fill it right to the top, almost to the top. I'm going to submerge the part in the cup. See where I'm at, and I see I can still get some material in here. And I mix too much, but not really that much more. Better too much than too little. You don't want to be screwing around, running back and forth, trying to get extra ultra cal and sand and trying to mix it while, you know, the part's in the cup. So that's pretty much to the top right there. So what I do is something flat like this. Just put it across the cup like that. Now I'm going to take it off this table. I'm going to put it over there where my router is. I got a napkin over there. Because this table has a slant in it. Okay. That's it. We're done. All we need to do is wait. Seems a shame to waste all that, really. But I don't have another plastic part. If I had another plastic part, that's probably half a cup right there. If I had another plastic part ready, I would make it, but I don't. So, all right. So that's all we gotta look at right now. And my battery's running out on the camera anyway, so.